I will talk about Pakistan-Ukraine relationship. Can you please switch on the slide? It's about impact of Russia-Ukraine war on Pakistan-Ukraine relationship. And I will try to focus on defense and trade relations, basically primarily defense relationship. First of all, there's quite a confusion in the world these days because Mr. Trump has become the 47th president of the United States. He has been the 45th one also. And suddenly everything is going topsy-turvy inside the United States and also in the world also. He wants to fix everything in a rush. He says that he's going to bring about peace in Ukraine. He has talked to Mr. Putin, and his envoys have been meeting the Russian counterparts also. And if it happens, it can happen. Everything is possible with Mr. Trump around. If that happens, whatever I'm saying may perhaps be something which may not happen. But anyway, keeping the predictable variables in mind, I will tell you a few things. Next slide, please. A second. Okay. Okay. First of all, the Russia-Ukraine war has disrupted global politics, economy, and trade. We know all of that. Ukraine was part of the supply chain for grain, and Pakistan was also getting grain from Ukraine. And Russia, we know that, was in the business of supplying energy, particularly to Europe, and also oil to the rest of the world. So both Russia and Ukraine were suppliers of major commodities: grain, defense equipment, energy. So their war has actually upset the world. And before the war, Russia and Ukraine had good relations. Ukrainians, most of them, Philip might bear me out, speak Russian, if I'm not wrong. Even Zelensky speaks Russian. Their names are same. Volodymyr Zelensky, Vladimir Putin. I don't find a lot of difference in the names. They are perhaps of common stock also. So, but it has upset the entire world. Pakistan's relationship with Ukraine have been strong in defense and trade, and there is a reason for it. Since Russia wasn't very forthcoming about providing defense hardware to Pakistan, Pakistan found it convenient to get Ukrainian hardware because they were basically Russians in make, but there were no objections from Indian side. So we were having T-80UD tanks, and I'll talk about that again in my presentation, and IL-78 air-to-air refuelers. So we had good defense ties, and we had good trade with them, with Ukrainians. The trade with Ukraine was something in the region of $800 million US. They were the major supplier of grain to us. And you may also be knowing that traditionally, for a very long time, the ambassador of Pakistan to Ukraine has been a general. And there is a reason for that. Taimur Saab would be knowing more about it. So the purpose of this presentation is to analyze how the war has impacted Pakistan-Ukraine relations, focusing on defense and trade. So as we know, it has been a major supplier of defense goods to Pakistan. While I was in the army, I remember in my division, we had a regiment of T-80UD tanks. It was part of our formation, the divisional reserve. And we also know that we have got 4 IL-78 air-to-air refuelers, basically Russian-made, but we purchased them from Ukraine. And the air pods meant for the refueling are of Russian make. The aircraft engines and modernization of military equipment. So all of that we were doing with Ukraine because open defense ties with Russia have been problematic because of Indian objections. Even now, when Mr. Trump has offered F-35 aircraft to India, Russia has been quick in offering M57 stealth aircraft to India, 5th generation. So India has been a major buyer of Russian equipment. There are no two arguments about it, although our relationship with Russia is improving, but still a lot of Russian equipment is sold to India, and they have to keep in mind Indian objections. And about trade, Ukraine exported wheat, edible oils, and machinery to Pakistan. And Pakistan trades with Ukraine was, I said 800 million because that was the figure I read this morning, but in my presentation I've said $700 million before the war. It has decreased considerably because Ukraine is in the war zone, and once the war broke out, the grain supply stopped actually, and then the Black Sea supply of grain came to Pakistan's rescue, as it did to many other countries also. So Pakistan is in the supply chain of grain from Ukraine. Disruption in supply chains, already talked about it. Ukrainian defense industries has been affected by the war. Many of the places where defense equipment is made has been bombed. They're not producing defense equipment. And there have been delays in delivery of equipment to Pakistan. And we are foreseeing possible cancellations also. So Pakistan has been seeking alternate suppliers. China has been a dependable supplier of defense goods to Pakistan, and Turkey for military needs. Turkey and China both are major suppliers of drones. So drone is the future of warfare. Perhaps F-35 aircraft, as the Indian opposition has said, pieces of junk, they would not be required. Perhaps the whole world would be shifting to pilotless vehicles. So Pakistan, as has been said by speakers before me, Ambassador Brar Sahab, as well as Professor Adam Saud Sahab also, Pakistan does not want to side with any country. And Pakistan's Foreign Office has been very clear. We want to maintain friendly relations with Russia. We all understand that Russia is a major power despite the war. And we also know that Mr. Trump wants to have better relations with Russia. Putin, they're on talking terms. He has been calling Mr. Putin on telephone. So we also don't want to annoy the Americans also. We want to be peaceful. We don't want to shift into the Cold War mode. I have lived throughout my life in the Cold War. When I was in the army, we were very clear. We were siding with the US camp, not with the Russians, but perhaps that was also a mistake on our part. We should have been even-handed there also. But at that time, perhaps our leaders thought that to counter India, we needed quick defense equipment, and that was only coming from the Americans. But there were consequences. Russia was annoyed with us for a very long time. We were on unfriendly terms, and it has taken our policymakers, our leaders, our diplomats a lot of time to mend fences, to make it palatable for the Russians to accept us. And now we know that we are holding joint Zhurba or friendship exercises with the Russians. And as Adam Saud Saab has very correctly pointed out, they have also taken place in Gilgit-Baltistan, which we think is our integral part. India may think otherwise, but they can go to hell from my side. Okay, trade. We know that grain stopped. There was increased cost of when we imported grain from elsewhere, from Central Asia. There were higher prices for importing this wheat. Edible oil, fuel prices affected Pakistan's economy. And we shifted to Russia and Kazakhstan for wheat imports. And overall, the global supply chain was disrupted. And there was an inflation all over the world. Even in Europe, a donor was costing €3 in Germany. Before the war, it now costs something like €9 to €10, and it is the common staple food for people in Berlin and other major cities of Germany. So from €3, 8, 9, $10, that is how the prices of edibles has escalated. And it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not only Pakistan. So Pakistan's diplomatic stance has been, we have avoided taking stance in the war. We say that we don't want to side with anybody. We want peace in the region because, unfortunately, we are almost a neighbor of Russia. So anything that happens in this region is going to affect us. And we also know that many times the surge in terrorism that happens in our region happens because of what is happening in Russia or the surrounding areas. Pakistan has abstained from voting against Russia in the UN. Our stance is very calibrated. We are not taking any sides. We are not giving any indication that we are with any of the two warring parties. We want best for the two countries. We want good relations with all countries in the world, including the US, China, India, everybody. So this is a difficult balancing act, but I think our diplomats are doing a good job. And as mentioned by Ambassador Ibrar Saab, also our Foreign Minister, Deputy Prime Minister has also said as much that we don't want to take sides in this war. So if the war stops, hopefully it will stop. Whether Mr. Zelensky agrees to it or not, whether the Europeans agree to it or not, I think it's going to stop. It cannot continue indefinitely. And if Trump is going to put his weight behind it, he might as well achieve some kind of fragile peace. So if the war stops, maybe in a year's time, or 2 years' time, some kind of defense activity, defense import can resume with Ukraine, unless the Russians decide to fill in the gap and supply us with tanks and aircraft and other things. And again, if Ukraine again becomes a major hub of producing wheat and machinery, Pakistan would like to buy it from them at a smaller cost, at lesser cost. And meanwhile, Pakistan will continue to Pakistan cannot broker peace, but Pakistan wants to benefit from peace in the area from both countries, Russia and Ukraine. So in summary, supply chains were disrupted, costs were increased. We had to shift to other sources for import of defense goods as well as grain. And but we believe in neutrality. We do not want to annoy anybody. We want to keep our guards up. We want to have a strong defense. We do not want India to coerce us, and it can only be done if we have a strong military. We are all aware of that. Nuclear deterrence notwithstanding, we need to have strong conventional defenses. And that is all from my side. Thank you for your attention.